on Keith Moon's solo album called Two Sides of the Moon back in 1975. And you wrote the opening track called Crazy Like a Fox. And that blew me away because like I'm a huge Who fan. And I would definitely say like the peak of my Who fandom was in high school. Like, you know, they were one of the bands that I just listened to all the time back then. So I was like consuming everything about the band, including the solo albums. I remember checking out Keith's album, and I have to say, Crazy Like a Fox was kind of the only track where I was like, yeah, this one's pretty good. Um, and so I've known about this song for years, and I only found out like a week ago that it was you that wrote it. So it was kind of crazy how it's like, you know, I've known this song for years, and now I'm talking with the guy who wrote it. So yeah, like how did you get involved working with Keith?
Okay, yeah, you're going to like this because it is kind of interesting. My brother, as I mentioned earlier, when he left, after the Staehely brothers, when he joined JoJo Gunn, they were in the studio doing some recording. I went down to one of the sessions, and their engineer was a guy named John Stronach, and I heard him mention, "Hey, next week I'm starting an album with Keith Moon." I said, "Really?" I said, "Who's producing it?" He said, "Mal Evans." I
Right.
said, "Mal Evans, the Beatles roadie, the guy that we saw in all the movies, big
Yep.
guy with horn rimmed glass." He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, do they have all the songs?" And he said, "I don't think so." So I might have something for him. He said, "Well, come down to the record plant on Wednesday, and I'll introduce you to Mal." So I had this song. I tell you the truth, I didn't really value it that much. I'm crazy like it was just kind of a cute little rock pop rock
Hmm.
song. Uh, but I had a little demo of it, and then I wrote another song. I don't even remember what it was, especially for the occasion. I think I played that for Mal first. I don't know. And then I played him Crazy Like a Fox. And he said, "Oh, I could see Keith doing that. We'll cut it on Friday." This was Wednesday.
Right.
I said, "Man, this is the way song plugging should always be," but never has been since.
Right.
Before, so I said, "Well, do you have the musicians lined up?" He said, "Well, no." And I said, "Well, of course I know the song, and my brother has played it with me before. He plays guitar at JoJo Gunn." He said, "Oh, well, let's get all of JoJo Gunn to play on it." So I call up the guys and say, "You want to do a Keith Moon session on Friday?" And of course, the answer was yes. And so we go down there that day. And besides me and JoJo Gunn, there were two other musicians that Mal had called down there. Sitting next to me, I was playing acoustic six string. Sitting next to me playing acoustic 12 string was Spencer Davis. And we were in a little isolation room. And out in the big room, uh, all of JoJo Gunn, their drummer, another set of drums for Keith, and like I said, my brother on electric guitar, Jesse Ed Davis had been called in too. He was there. Although the solo you hear on the record is my brother, not
Mm.
Jesse Ed. Uh, and that's the way we recorded the basic track. That's the way they wanted to do it: two drums, two electric guitars, two acoustic. I mean, that's pretty unusual,
Yeah.
but it's the way they did it. Well, okay, so then I got out in the studio. I had the lyric written out for Keith because I mean, he could have probably only heard it the day before, and put it on a music stand. I had the headphones on and kind of cueing him where to come in, and he's he's out there with. He's got a bottle of Cavassier in one hand, and he's reeling around. So I'm cueing him, and he stand back. You got to give the girl room to move because she's crazy like a fox, and that fox got her eyes on you. Anyway, you couldn't really call it singing, but he was being Keith Moon, which is exactly what you wanted him to be.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that was it. And then they started calling me back for more sessions to play acoustic guitar. So I ended up playing on about half the album. And one, you'll appreciate this being a big Who fan. One memorable moment for me. not on tape. But while the engineer was uh, changing reels of tape on one of the songs we were doing, one of the sessions, so I was sitting there with the cans on. Keith sat there, and we were waiting for him to change the reel. Just on acoustic guitar, I started going ding 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 ding, like My Generation. All of a
Oh
sudden,
yeah,
Keith comes in, and all of a sudden, I'm playing My Generation with Keith Moon. Like,
nice.
okay, I'll remember this.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was a trip because when got to know Keith a little bit. My girlfriend and I went up to his house, had dinner one night, and with he and his girlfriend, the Danish girl that was on the cover, and actually it was with her to the end, I think.
Mm,
And and he and I never really saw him get crazy.
right.
I don't doubt any of the stories I heard, but what you'll find this interesting because playing on the record, I started noticing he wasn't playing drums that much.
Hmm.
And I asked him, I said, Keith Moon solo record, you're not playing drums very much. What's going on? And he said, well, when we're doing the Tommy movie, uh, he said, uh, me and what was the kind of gruff actor that was in that movie? Kind
Oh
of a
man.
tough looking guy. I'll think of it in a minute. But at any rate, he said we were in full makeup and costumes and stuff, and we had a break, and so we went across from the studio over to the local pub, and we were in this pub, and uh, some of the locals were giving us some shit, and we got into it, and next thing I knew, this guy had pinned my hand to the table with an
Mm,
ice pick,
mm,
and and kind of messed up one of my ligaments or something, so I'm kind of having trouble with my hand. And I said, yeah, you do realize you're Keith Moon, right? A drummer, yeah, that's what you do. But don't you think you should see a hand specialist about this? Oh, well, I don't know. You know, I haven't read all the books about Keith, but I've never heard anybody tell that story. Since you're a Who fan, have you ever seen that
no,
story
no.
told before?
But
But
that would check out if he wasn't, because I know he didn't really play drums on that solo album. So that would
he
check
did play
out.
some, but he didn't play much. Like I
Yeah.
say, he played on Crazy Like a Fox, but Curly was playing also,
Hmm.
and uh, and I know so he played some, but it's not what you would expect for a Keith Moon album. So that's why I'm sure it wasn't that successful because he was doing Beast Boy songs and he was
Yeah.
and you would if nothing else you would expect to hear Keith Moon kind of going crazy on
Yeah.
drums at least a few times.
I know he was a big fan of surf music, so it might have been kind of a passion thing for him to do an album with like Beach Boys stuff on it and that sort of thing. But yeah, no, and I mean it's really a cool album because like some of the people that were on it, like of course Ringo Starr, David Bowie, um, Joe Walsh, Mal Evans, as you mentioned, and I think for yourself being on that album, it's of course very good company to be in. But probably the coolest thing to think about is the fact that the album is like mostly covers. So your original is one of the few on there. And to top it off, you and John Lennon both submitted songs for Keith Moon to do. Like that's just got to be kind of wild to think about there.
Well, I'm glad you said it because yeah, when it came out, I was thinking, wow, John Lennon gave him a song that had never been recorded before, and mine is the first song on the album and a single. Okay, I guess I think more of the song than I originally thought of my own song.
And you were talking, I guess, going back to Keith, you were talking about, I guess spending time with him and stuff. So he was, you never really saw his crazy self. He was sort of more normal guy when you were around him.
I tell you, my girlfriend at the time that I was living with was English, and she had been to she was a journalist, and she'd been to English girls' schools, and had sort of a proper English accent. So I don't know if it was because of her, but I found it interesting when we went over there for dinner. Just she and I and Keith and his girlfriend. He he was very much the English gentleman.
Yeah.
Yes, come sit over here. Let me get you a bevy. And I mean, he was, and I don't know if it would have been that, or if he was cueing off her uh, accent that was, from, since you're about the class consciousness of
Right.
way people speak in the UK. So I don't know if that was why, but I was kind of surprised at how kind of formal he was.
Hmm. I,
And
I have seen that, like clips of him where he's talking. Oh yes, jolly good. Yes, yes. Oh bloody brilliant. He kind of he could put on that voice for sure. um, but yeah, um,
I
and
took an album over there. In fact, we ended up spending the night over there, listening to music and stuff. And he had told me before he was into New Orleans music, and I said, "Did you ever hear this album, New Orleans, Home of the Blues?" Because that's when I was in high school in the '60s. It was in Austin. It was if you went to a party, everybody had that album, and it was a compilation of there was Aaron Neville, it was Ernie Cato, it was Jesse Hill. It was sort of a compilation of some New Orleans acts in the early '60s, and he didn't know it, so I had it on vinyl, and I took it over there and played for him, and I forgot to get it when we left, and so somewhere in Keith's collection is vinyl is my album.
cool.